All right, the last judgment of Nefer is a page from the Book of the Dead. So we're first going to start to talk about what the Book of the Dead is. So we understand that Egyptian art really deals with the afterlife and it has this big elaborate set of funerary beliefs. A lot of it revolves around the myth of Osiris, who's the lord and ruler of the underworld. And there's all these mummies and they're all put in coffins, and those coffins are in tombs, and it's for the purpose of serving in the afterlife. But we haven't really talked about is the journey. So this piece focuses on that journey. So the deceased was aided in all of these tasks by funerary texts like the Book of the Dead. So the function, it kind of reminds me of like the handbook for the recently deceased from Beetlejuice. That's not a real thing. Don't write that in your notes. But it would have functioned as, the Book of the Dead functioned as a kind of guidebook and reference to be used during the journey to the afterlife. And this would have been inside of the tomb with the mummy, not inside of the sarcophagus or the coffin, but somewhere in the tomb, so that when their soul emerged, when their ka emerged, they would have these scrolls, these images, and then it would show them, you know, what to do from here on to get to the afterlife. All right, I want you guys to label some things on your picture. Nefer is appearing 3 times. So Nefer 1 on the left, Nefer 2 kind of in the middle bottom, and then you go up to the top register and there's Nefer a 3rd time. And this is considered a continuous narrative where the same figure is reappearing in the same story. There's nothing dividing him from Nefer 1 and Nefer 2. It's just the same character. So content, what this is also showing, is 3 successive stages of Nefer's induction into the afterlife, the journey of getting into the afterlife, which when we get to Western art, that's what a lot of Christian art focuses on, this idea of entry into where are we going to go? Are we going to go to heaven? Or are we going to go to hell? And who is the judge and who's making this decision? And why is this decision being made? All right, so we're gonna write what is happening along the way. So starts on the bottom left, and you have Anubis leads Nefer by the hand to the spot where he will weigh his heart against the feather of truth. So his heart is in this little canopic jar and is on this scale being weighed with the feather of truth. And you want the feather to weigh more than your heart. That is showing that you didn't have a heavy heart, and that way he could pass. If his heart weighed heavier than the feather, then, hang on, you have Amit here. He is the dreaded eater of the dead, part crocodile, part lion, part hippopotamus, and he watches eagerly for a sign from the ibis-headed god, Thoth, who is recording the result. So he's kind of like a scribe writing everything down. And if the scale were to go the other way and not be in Nefer's favor, then Amit would eat Nefer, and then he would become nothing, which would be the worst possible fate. He wouldn't go on to the afterlife, he would just disappear. On top of the scale, this is Maat, and she has a feather on her headdress, and the feather came from her. All right, so he passed that test. He didn't get to eat him, bummer. So he then moves on, and now Horus is presenting Nefer to Osiris, whose throne right here is sitting on the Nile, and it has papyrus growing out of it. So again, we're seeing someone of an upper elite who is sitting on a throne. His feet aren't touching the ground, and he's also enclosed in a space. So therefore, he's also more important. Another thing I want to point out is the men, when they would have painted the skin tone of men, they would have been kind of red and kind of darker because the men were the ones that worked outside in the sun versus the women, this is Osiris's wife and his sister, they would have been kept not in the sun. All right, top register, you have Nefer again, and he is now being accepted into the afterlife, kneeling before the 14 gods of the underworld. So this could be a really good comparative question. Even though we haven't talked about the Last Judgment, this is from a Gothic cathedral, I believe in France, that we're gonna look at when we get to Gothic art. And it's really typical, depicting the last judgment. So you have, Jesus, and he's in this enclosed space, just like Osiris is in an enclosed space. And Jesus is saying, are you going to go up? Are you going to go down? Are you going to go to heaven? Or are you going to go to hell? And what makes that decision? Instead of the 14 gods here, we have the 12 apostles all organized. And then on the right is the chaotic version of hell. You have your satanic creatures. You have animal-like creatures that are eating and then like regurgitating out the people that are going to hell. You've got hellish things happening to people. And also when you look at Jesus, he's also sitting on a throne. His feet are on a platform, and it almost looks like water that he's on. Another comparison could be text, right? There's words that are being used throughout. And then on the Egyptian, on our continuous narrative of the last judgment of Nefer, we also have hieroglyphs. So combining text with images could be another comparison between these two. But these are both examples of narratives. They're both examples of narratives depicting a similar content, right? Talking about the morality, weighing someone to determine their afterlife. Also, the composition being divided into registers. That's what this kind of becomes, right? You have this upper register we can't really see, the middle register, bottom register. All right, so by the New Kingdom, the Egyptians come to believe that only those who had had a good life could go to the afterlife, right? Very similar to the Christian belief. And whoops, hi there. This is depicting the Egyptian concept of justice and morality. If you are good, you can move on. If you are not good, you do not get to move on. And then it's also good to point out that this isn't the only thing that is depicting that. This is another papyrus page from the Book of the Dead, kind of depicting the same thing. It's just going the other direction, right? So you have the scale, they're weighing, and then you've got Osiris. And I forgot to mention, what is Osiris holding? Right? The same symbols of kingship, of being a ruler that our other kings are holding. All right, good job. That is the end of Egypt. Oh my gosh, we finished.